Last night, everything in the universe was in dreams. There was no sound except the slight rustling of the wind playing with the leaves. Dreams are also falling on the waterfalls of the nearby lake. The cicada has become silent, and the sound of frogs is also disappearing. In this atmosphere of rest and tranquility, there are only full-grown buds swaying helplessly off the branches. Before the arrival of the morning, there was a faint redness on the eastern horizon, and soon the first rays of the sun, eager to see the smiles of the buds, appeared. When the buds opened, the fragrance spread everywhere. In the morning, the scent of fragrant air joined her breath for a breath of freshness. Then her sleep became deeper. Eyelids widened, and no one came in between the sweet dreams. Impatient rays were gradually appearing. As soon as the light spread, the birds perched in the nests fluttered, and the birds sang songs of joy in the fragrant air. She woke up gradually to the sound of birds chirping on the canopy tree. Without opening her eyes, she stretched her neck to one side and felt her partner's touch. It was a dream come true. She circled closer to him. When he touched her body in a state of semi-sleep, a wave of pleasure and pleasure ran through his limbs. A few moments clung to each other, kissed on the neck, ears and cheeks, slowly stood up. Sleep, fragrance, and the server of songs were still left, so they went to the lake step by step. Seeing the colorful birds bathing in the blue water of the lake, it seemed that the water fairies were dancing. When they fluttered their arms, they would disappear into the lake. After bathing, some birds were enjoying sunbathing by the lake. When the flower of daffodil saw the reflection in the water, it became proud of its beauty and began to sway. Drops of dew on the petals began to drip like tears. They both started walking on the trails, playing tricks. He would look at her with loving eyes and admire her beauty in his heart. Delicate and beautiful legs, slender neck and beautiful eyes, bright and silky skin and sweet tail. Like the leaf at the end of a flowering branch with a bud hidden in its trunk. As he walked along, he stepped back a little and smelled the body in a special way through his nostrils. Emotions were running high. He tried to take her in his arms again and again. She would move away and feel embarrassed. Then it seemed that the petals of the bud hidden in the cover of the leaf were reluctant to open. Innumerable flowers blossomed in both a bud and in the garden of the mind. For a long time, both of them would touch each other's bodies. Touching each other with their tongues, eyes gestured. He put on a hat and started talking to the wind. The days went by like this, playing with flowers, having fun, and talking to the wind. Gradually, she began to feel that the weight of the nipples was increasing and that something new was throbbing inside her stomach. Just a little surprised. Then he sighed with joy that this strange beating was a knock of joy. Gradually, everyone came to know. Wherever they passed, flowers bloomed on the branches to express happiness. The leaves clap. The birds would sing. In the evening, Firefly would decorate the bushes with bright lights. The stars twinkle in the sky. But it was a waiting evening. There were whispers. As time went on, the anxiety increased. Night came, but companion did not come. She looked up at every sigh. Night cut in the eyes. In the morning, she went out in search. As she walked, she saw the marks of a lion's claws on the ground, and her heart sank. She leaned against a tree and stood up, slightly regained consciousness. She looked up and saw many vultures hovering. The feet were so heavy that she could no longer walk. Still, a little further. She peeked out of the bush. Yes, those remains belonged to him. Sighs came out of her heart, and tears came from her eyes. She came back disappointed. They spent happy days walking along the paths of the forest. Now there were days spent wandering alone, exhausted from grief. The beauty and colors of the lake were the same, but from the desolation of the heart, everything seemed useless. The lioness was also seen near the lake with her cubs, but there was no lion. The children kept sucking on the nipples, sometimes lovingly licking them, sometimes removing them out of anger and staring around sadly. The eyes were looking for someone. Her lion had run away from her. She became upset when a wave of pain arose in the female deer's abdomen. She sat in the shade of a tree sadly. She was missing her partner. She wishes he would have been there today. The interval between the pain waves was getting shorter and shorter. She was sitting alone in the crowd of mixed emotions of joy, sorrow, and pain of joy, sorrow, and pain of the little guest who came. Suddenly, the little guest was found with a strong wave of pain. The head, neck, and front legs had just appeared. She felt a sigh and turned around to see the lioness coming towards her with her cubs. The sounds of wolves could be heard from afar. She stood up in fear. The baby is half in the womb and half outside. It took some time to move faster and harder. When the lioness saw this scene, her steps stopped there. She kept looking at her in surprise. After walking a short distance, the deer sat down. She has completed the birth process. The child was trying to stand up. She twisted her neck to lick the baby and then looked at the lioness. The lioness would take a step and stop. She remembered the time when she became a mother. Then her lion was also with her. When she remembered the lion, her heart sank and the scene turned in her eyes. They were animals that stood upright on two legs, the most dangerous animals in the world. So they were a long way from the lion, but a faint sound came, the crackling of dry sticks underfoot. Then the lion walked some distance and lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The lioness did not understand what had happened. The two-legged approached the lion and picked him up, but he was nowhere to be seen. The sounds of wolves were also coming closer. The whole group was looking for prey. The deer stood up nervously. She would step forward with less force and look at the child. The child stood up, but was not yet able to walk. The lioness approached the baby. The newborn did not know who was standing next to him. When he saw the nipples full of lioness's milk, he put his mouth in it. He couldn't take a sip when the baby lioness pushed him. The nipple slipped out of his mouth, and he had to go in front of the lioness. Standing with weak legs, he turned towards the lioness. When the deer saw it, her heart pounded. Suddenly, the lioness lifted its paw and slowly turned the baby towards the deer. When the child saw the mother, he jumped toward her. The wolves were approaching, making noise. He had not yet reached his mother when the wolves snatched him. One piece of the little soul in someone's mouth, and the other in someone's stomach. When the lioness saw this scene, a few drops dripped from the corner of her eye and joined the dewdrops shining like pearls on the green. The deer ran and hid in the bushes. The forest was darkened by oppression. Not a drop of rain dripped. The clouds were thundering, the lightning was thundering, and it was getting darker and darker. Waves of pain began to rise in the deer's stomach once again. The world of motherhood, trying to save her life and terror, had left her half dead. The second child entered the world of the same trouble. The whole membrane could not come out due to nausea. An old vulture sitting on a nearby tree was watching the scene. He came immediately and took the membrane in his beak. In a few moments, the child stood up. He looked at his mother, approached her, and kissed her. A few drops of milk came to her part as the milk ducts began to dry. He looked at his mother's face. Touching his mother's body with his lips, he stood in front of her face. The deer saw him. Trembling appears in her body. The last tears flowed, and the eyes were stoned. The bundle of oppression deepened. It was dark during the day. The birds were sitting in their nests. The monkeys were taking shelter in the dense trees. The lions entered the caves. The wolves were moving. In the pitch darkness, their eyes shone like embers, fire. It was getting darker and deeper. It was dark during the day, but not a drop of rain fell. The clouds are just thundering. The lighting is thundering. The flames are approaching. A frail, helpless child seeks refuge in the thorny bushes.